Hi, my name is Chandler and this is my second YouTube video. So if you watched my first video, you kind of got an introduction and know a little bit about me. In this video, I want to talk about my diagnosis of borderline personality disorder in a little bit more depth. So we live in this kind of golden age of acceptance, and mental illness has become a lot more widely accepted and understood in mainstream society. And that is awesome. It's awesome that a lot of the stigma that goes with mental health disorders is being decreased and people are becoming a lot more comfortable talking about their experiences, needs, and struggles in a more public way. However, there are certain mental health disorders and diagnoses that really haven't been destigmatized yet. For example, schizophrenia, dissociative identity disorder, and in my opinion, borderline personality disorder are still pretty heavily stigmatized. People are accepting of someone with depression and anxiety, but maybe not schizophrenia or borderline. And I want to try and change that in, the small way that I can contribute. So I want to tell you my story. I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder about a year ago. I had done a little bit of research a couple years ago and thought, hey, those symptoms kind of fit me, but whatever. After I was hospitalized for the fourth time, making a third attempt on my life, my therapist sat me down and she's like, look, you can't do this anymore. And I was like, well, I don't even know what's wrong with me. I had previously been given a diagnosis of bipolar disorder type 2, but it didn't fit. If you are unaware, bipolar disorder is characterized by fluctuations between a manic state and a depressive state. A manic state is when a person is highly impulsive, they might go without sleep for a long time, have really grandiose thoughts. And on the other hand, depression is a really low point. My grandfather, my mom's dad, had bipolar 1 disorder. Like, my mom says it was like textbook bipolar 1. She said she remembers periods of her childhood based on whether her dad was manic or depressed. My grandfather also was an alcoholic and used alcohol to cope with his illness, which in all reality was not productive. But by the time he was an older adult, he got his illness under control. We also believe that my uncle had bipolar disorder. However, he took his own life before he was able to work with a doctor and receive a diagnosis. So we don't really know, but it's what we can go on. So the diagnosis of bipolar disorder kind of made sense for me. I definitely had a lot of fluctuations in mood, and I was definitely depressed, and there was a family history. However, the key to a diagnosis of bipolar, either type 1 or 2, is experiencing a manic or hypomanic episode, and I had never experienced that. So I technically didn't fit the criteria, but they kind of just slapped a diagnosis on to say that they could, because we didn't really know. After I started working with a new psychiatrist, she told me pretty bluntly, yeah, you have borderline. And I was angry about that because I didn't want that diagnosis. I felt the diagnosis of bipolar was acceptable to me because it ran in my family, and it was a disorder caused by chemical imbalances in the brain. It was treatable by medication. I could do some therapy on the side to help, but it wasn't something wrong with me as a person. It was something wrong with my brain. However, borderline is, in its essence, a personality disorder, which means it cannot be treated by medication. It's not caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain. The thing about borderline as well is we don't know a lot about it. Doctors, therapists, researchers really struggle to define borderline, its causes, because it's difficult to research. People with borderline can be unreliable and might often drop out of studies, so they can be difficult to research. And many medical professionals are really reluctant to work with people with borderline, which I'll get into in a minute. So from what I know, borderline is caused by a complex network of trauma and childhood experiences that affect your attachment style. At its core, borderline is defined by attachment. And there are, I don't know very much about attachment styles. I will put links in the description down below to more information about attachment styles, but people with borderline have very insecure attachments to those around them, which means they're constantly in fear of the people they love leaving them. They have low I say they, like it's not me. We deal with low self-esteem, self-doubt, chronic feelings of emptiness, and we can be kind of impulsive in relationships. For example, and I've experienced this many times, thankfully I've never acted on it. If I get into a fight with my mom, I often think I'm never talking to her again. You know, I won't even go for Christmas. Our relationship is done. And we got into a fight over like which car I took to work, you know, simple stuff like that. But in my mind, it escalates and catastrophizes, and I think I'm done forever, which is kind of typical of people with borderline. We act very, I don't want to say irrationally or impulsively, but our emotions are intensified, so we might take over dramatic steps to solve a problem, if you know what I mean. People with borderline are also kind of considered to be like difficult to be in a relationship with. I was already in a relationship at the time I was diagnosed, and I was kind of scared to tell my boyfriend because I thought, oh, he's not gonna want me anymore because he doesn't want to be like in a relationship with this crazy person. And he was totally accepting of my diagnosis. He said that he loved me before he knew I had borderline. He wasn't going to stop loving me because of a change in my medical records. However, this kind of gets me on to my next point. Medical professionals are often reluctant or unwilling to work with people with borderline. When I was talking to my therapist about my diagnosis and kind of processing that, she said, yeah, but I won't put it on your insurance. I'm like, well, what do you mean? And she explained to me that therapists are often required to submit a diagnosis to insurance to get insurance coverage to continue therapy. However, she said she didn't want to list my diagnosis as borderline personality disorder because insurance companies don't particularly like to give coverage and work with people with borderline because who knows? I'm assuming because treatment is ongoing, it can get very expensive. People with borderline are often seen as inconsistent and might not show up to appointments. So that's my thought, but I don't know exactly why. I've also read a couple of studies through my school's database about professionals' reluctance to work with people with borderline. Many doctors and therapists don't like patients with borderline personality disorder. They see them as unreliable, unstable, and sometimes unwilling to work on their issues, which is frustrating because how is someone like me supposed to make progress in my mental health and in my diagnosis when the medical professionals who are supposed to be giving me care are reluctant to work with me? That angers me. I will try to find a link to the study I read down below. If not, I'll put like the DOI or something so you can find it if you are interested. But that really angered me because I consider myself a conscientious person. I go to all of my appointments. I genuinely work hard in therapy. I show up consistently. I take my medicine. And why wouldn't someone want to work with me? I'm amazing. I'm kidding. It just really frustrated me, and it really demonstrated that stigma is not only widespread in society, but it's widespread among the professionals who are supposed to be providing our care. And for a while that really discouraged me because I'm like, well, I just have to deal with it myself. I have to do it all on my own. No one can help me. And I'm very lucky that I have found a therapist that I absolutely love working with. I've been working with her for almost 3 years now, and we've developed a really good bond and rapport, and I'm comfortable telling her things. I also have a psychiatrist who has experience in borderline personality disorder. If you are diagnosed with borderline, I would suggest looking for doctors who specifically specialize in borderline or therapists who offer DBT. The gold standard of treatment for borderline personality disorder is dialectical behavioral therapy, or DBT. DBT was created by Marsha Linehan at the University of Washington as kind of an offshoot of cognitive behavioral therapy, specifically designed for the treatment of people with borderline personality disorder. Now, it is not only for people with borderline. Many people who do not have borderline go through DBT and find it very helpful in building a life worth living, because that is really the goal of DBT, is to build a life worth living for anybody. But these skills are specifically targeted to help people with borderline personality disorder. DBT has 4 modules. The core mindfulness module teaches mindfulness skills. There are also modules on emotion regulation, distress tolerance, and interpersonal effectiveness, which are 3 areas in which people with borderline personality disorder tend to struggle. So there is hope. There are treatments available, however, they can be difficult to come by. DBT therapists are a little bit harder to find than just a regular marriage and family therapist, and DBT groups might not be offered in all towns or areas of the country. There are lots of online resources for DBT and also for people who have a loved one experiencing borderline personality disorder, and I will try to put some of those links in the description down below as well. My mom has found a lot of support by going to NAMI, the National Alliance for Mental Illness, support groups, and she's actually becoming a support group leader very soon, so I'm excited for her. There is also a website called, I believe it's Family Connections, which was created by Marsha Linehan's sister, if I'm not wrong, and she, gives skills for the families and loved ones of people with borderline to kind of help them through what they're going through. So I feel like I've talked and rambled a lot and don't really have a good stopping point for this video, so I will just try to leave it here. But again, I want to thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. If you are in need of treatment or support, also leave a comment and I will try to find you some resources. And thank you for listening. It helps, So again, if you are experiencing a crisis, please let a loved one or medical professional know you are not going through this alone. I'm going to leave some hotlines in the description down below. Please make use of your resources and stay safe. Bye.